seen any numbers.
There it is.
We are live, I think. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
We'll wait just a few minutes, let some people hop on here with us.
If you're on, let us know where you're watching from. Say hi.
Debbie is with us.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Heather. Watching from Wyoming.
Ooh, you're cold wherever you are in Wyoming.
Wisconsin. Bye. We got Florida, North Carolina. Hi, Heidi and Lori.
All right, got a good number of people.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have some special guests with us today, Dr. Dave Ellison from Bimeda, along with Jimmy Schramm, a 5-star event writer, and they're going to talk about this year's season's deworming checklist.
As always, please make sure you get all of your questions in the comments. At the end of this segment, we will be giving away 2 little prize packages. 2 lucky winners are going to get some Equimax and a $50 Valley Vet Supply gift card. So make sure you get all those questions in there. And with that, Jimmy and Dr. Dave, we are going to turn it over to you.
Right. Hi, everybody. We're so excited you're here. We are currently at the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day. It's Tuesday, so it's early in the week, but the event starts in a couple days, and we were lucky enough to be able to get together and bring you this information from here, which is a bit more of a fun background. And my husband's competing this weekend, so everybody tune in, cheer him on. He's going to need it. But anyway, so we're here to talk to you a little bit about deworming and, just some pointers that you might have, try and answer some questions that you might have. And, in our barn, we use Equimax, so I wanted to talk to Dr. Dave about why that product is such a great product.
It's a great question. And Equimax is what we consider to be a top shelf dewormer, meaning that it's got 2 ingredients in it, ivermectin and praziquantel, which means that it takes care of all the major parasites that you'd be concerned about in your horse, including tapeworms. What makes it unique is the fact that it's apple flavored, which is, I bet, one thing that you really like with your horses. They're much more accepting of it. It doesn't smell like a chemical factory. It smells like apples. And it's got a very ergonomically designed syringe, which you've probably also noticed. It's designed to fit smaller hands, as the majority of horses are being dewormed by women these days. And it's got a greater range of horses that you can use it in. Foals as young as a month of age. You can use it in mares that are being bred, mares that are pregnant, mares that are nursing foals, and stallions that are being used for breeding. So really has a lot to offer.
Hey, do you think, Melanie, could you open that box and show us the handle?
Sure.
So we can kind of show it to everybody. It is a really cool thing because, most of it even has you can kind of see it's got a place for both fingers. It's super easy to use, which is, one of the great things about Equimax. I do have a question for you. So for some people that are not really hand grazing their horse that much, or their horses aren't on a ton of grass, maybe dirt lot, or in the West Coast where there's not a ton of grass, what is the worming schedule like for them, or do they keep using the same Equimax
it's a great question, because a lot of people think that a horse needs to be grazing in order to have a parasite issue. And there are some of the parasites of horses that don't require grazing. Stomach worms, for instance, are carried by flies. Bots, of course, are just an intermediate form or a larva of a fly. So they're carried by flies. And then, of course, tapeworms actually are not picked up during grazing of grass per se. They're actually picked up when the horse eats a little grain mite that has eaten the tapeworm egg out of the feces. And so hay can be contaminated with those mites. And of course, it can be out in the grass also. So there's a host of things that horses can still have an issue with, even though they're not being grazed.
Right. And then regionally, I mean, are there different regions in the United States that worm more often or less, or what does that vary?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it can be a little bit confusing. And one of the things you can remember about worms is that they're kind of like people. So they don't. So they, in fact, we probably all know somebody that's kind of like a worm. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. What we are here to talk about is the fact that, for instance, in the north, where we have tough winters, we're not going to need to deworm during that weather because that's not conducive to the parasites doing well.
Okay.
Conversely, in the south, where it gets really, really hot, that's a time of year where the parasites don't do very well, and so we don't need to deworm in the heat of summer, for instance, in South Florida. And so, you kind of base it on your temperature, and then, of course, those parts of the United States that are sort of temperate year-round, require more deworming because the parasites hang on and aren't killed by either the heat or the dead of winter.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. That was kind of my last question. Are there any questions on there yet?
Can you talk a little bit about the safety of Equimax?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. Compared to some of the other products on the market, it's got a really wide margin of safety. It's actually about 10x. In other words, you can give 10 times the recommended dose in most horses without any issues. And that's not true of some of the other quote unquote top shelf dewormers.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Nikki did have a question. She said, do dewormers aggravate ulcers? If so, which should you use?
That is an excellent question. The short answer is anything that goes into the stomach, if a horse has an exposed ulcer, is going to be painful to that horse. And of course, if you know your horse has ulcers, they should be on, some kind of drug like omeprazole, which is the active ingredient in products that most people know as Gastrogard. And so, that would be an important thing. But yeah, you'd want to watch a horse that has gastric ulcers after deworming because they may show a mild colic or some discomfort.
That's actually really interesting.
This kind of, you kind of answered this with the safety, but is it okay to use this year-round? That's from Leanne.
Equimax?
Yes.
Yes, it would be. It would be. What we recommend, and this would be kind of the typical or the best program that we would recommend, would be in the fall, in places where you have frost, you'd want to deworm about a month to 6 weeks after that killing frost. That way we know the bot flies are gone, right? And so we're going to try to get the bots out of any of the bots that may have established in the stomach. And we're going to, of course, deworm for tapeworms and the small strongyles, which are really the worm that we're most concerned about in horses, because that's the one that burrows into the wall of the gut and can cause a lot of issues.
So gross.
And then we come back in the spring when we go to grass and we deworm with Equimax again. And that's going to disrupt that tapeworm life cycle enough that we're not really going to have to worry about tapeworms if we're doing a fall deworming and a spring deworming. And then these days, rather than rotation, we try to stick with the same active ingredient in the off season or the other times when we need to deworm. And so we'd want to use, if we're using Equimax, we'd want to use an ivermectin-based dewormer in the off season. And then really want to point out to people that your veterinarian is really your best resource for determining the deworming needs of your place and your horse, because they know what your stocking density is, they know what the history is on your farm, they know what products have probably been used in the past, and they can pick a program that's going to work the best and use some of the tools that they have available to them to deworming or figure out the deworming needs of your horses.
A resource that I use to just for, obviously I always use my vet, but I use the AAEP. They have great guidelines on their website and stuff too. So if you're ever, just have some questions or want to do research, that's another real good place to look around. Or even if you want to go to the Equimax website, there's tons of information on there about deworming and seasonal, all the different worms, all that stuff too.
Lori had a question. Can certain dewormers affect a mare or horse's temperament?
I've never had that happen to
per
me.
se. I wouldn't say that there's any ingredients in any of the dewormers that I'm aware of that would affect a horse's temperament. Other than some horses just don't like to be dewormed.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, and we have a barn full of mares. We have a ton of mares, and for the most part, they don't really seem to act any different from, at least not with Equimax. They don't act different with deworming.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a chemical effect. It'd be probably more the I don't want something put in my mouth.
Just being a mare in general.
You said that. I didn't.
I love mares. We have so many. I love mares, but they have their own set of rules.
They can be temperamental.
So.
Here. From Amy, could you explain any differing deworming needs for competition horses or those that stable within boarding or training barns?
That's really, again, that's really where you want to get your veterinarian involved in the process. But let's go to the last part of that question, the training or boarding barn. So if they have paddocks where they're grazing, it all depends on what the stocking density is and what's the history on the farm. If they had a lot of horses for a really long time, being grazed pretty heavily, or a heavy concentration of horses out on the pasture, it's highly likely that we're going to have a pretty heavy worm load out on that pasture, and it's going to be much easier for that grazing horse to pick up parasites.
What do you mean by stocking density?
Stocking density
is
just the number of horses per acre.
Property. Okay.
Per acre. Yeah.
Sorry, I've never heard that term before.
Sorry.
Okay. Makes sense.
All right. Debbie had a question, and I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly, but will Equimax be effective against encysted strongles? Can't say that word.
Against strongles?
Say it again. Strongyles?
Yeah.
Against strongyles?
Yeah. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
That one.
That's it.
That one? Yeah. There's two different kinds of strongyles in horses. Large strongyles actually used to be the most significant parasite in horses in the United States. And then with the advent of ivermectin and some of the other active ingredients that we have in our products, they were basically wiped out, but I mean, they're still there, right? And the way we know that actually is in Europe, deworming became prescription only. As a result of that, fewer people were deworming, and they started seeing large strongyles come back again. But the small strongyles are the ones we're most concerned about in the U.S. now. Those are the ones that are going to, rather than getting into the blood vessels like the large strongyles do, they're going to actually burrow into the wall of the intestine. And Equimax is highly effective against small strongyles. It's really our target parasite that we're after, because it's the most capable of causing the most damage.
Okay, right there. So Leanne is asking, so Equimax is a 2-time per year, even in Ohio?
Yep. It doesn't really actually matter where you are in the United States to feel comfortable that you've got complete tapeworm control. You'd want to go twice a year. As I said, about 6 weeks after a frost in the fall, and then again in the spring when you go to grass.
Trudy said that she loves everything about Equimax. How do you feel about worming only spring and summer if manure is picked up daily?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if we're
even from your paddocks picked up daily. I guess so. That's what she means.
Yeah, as long as it's all the manure. I mean, you've really reduced your opportunity to have a parasite picked up, right? The only thing to be concerned about, though, would be what we call ascarids or roundworms. Now, roundworms they're an age-dependent parasite, meaning really only occur in younger horses under about 16 months of age. But the thing about the worm eggs is the fact that they're really resistant. They can hang around for years, not months, but years on a pasture. And so if we've had young stock out on the pasture that had roundworms and they were passing the eggs, we could still have those out on the pasture. and we feel comfortable, right, that we're picking up all the manure, but those eggs are still there to be picked up during grazing. So yeah, you'd still want to deworm.
Okay. Lisa,
but again, your veterinarian, your vet is your best resource to make that call.
Lisa had asked about bloodworms. She just said, what about bloodworms?
Yeah, bloodworms is actually just another name for the large strongyles that we talked about earlier. And those are all but gone from the United States. They're not gone, but we just don't find them because the products that we have today have been so effective at limiting their exposure. What we call bloodworms are actually the large strongyles, which burrow through the wall and then get into the vessels that feed the intestine. And they were a huge cause of colic in the past. And of course, getting those under control has really been helpful to the equine population out there.
Amy had a question. Can you share any tips for deworming a challenging horse?
Sure, I can help with this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of different
tricks. So there's
tricks.
Tons of different stuff you can do. One thing that works that a lot of people like to do is getting like an empty syringe, like a dosing syringe or something, and using it with something that tastes good that the horse likes, whether it's like a molasses water or I don't know, anything that the horse likes in particular, and giving them that, several days before, so that when you're coming in there, not that you're trying to trick them, but just that you help them understand it's not going to be a bad thing that's coming. For the most part, what they're normally concerned about is that you're going to give them SMZs, which taste terrible, right? Or some kind of bute or something that doesn't taste well. So
something bitter and nasty.
Yeah.
Right.
And really Equimax doesn't taste bad for them. It's pretty palatable. So but they're creatures of habit, and if they've had something bad in their mouth a few times, they're going to remember that, right? So if you can kind of help them along with that, that's good. And really for us too, we try and give it to them in a place where they're not panicky, like in their stall, somewhere where they're comfortable, quiet, that they're, maybe not in a cross tie or tied to the trailer or outside in the field, just more of a chill location, I think also helps.
Yeah, those are really great tips. And I totally agree with just desensitizing by having something that's tasty to them. And molasses is really a great thing to use. They just, they love it. And after a while, they'll be looking for that syringe, right?
Right.
Yeah, and
exactly.
you can just use an old dewormer syringe.
Yeah, if you don't have
something the same
syringe.
size. Yeah.
Anything else good? We're here to answer all the questions.
Okay, that's it for the questions from the viewers for now, but I'm sure some more will pop up.
Okay.
Sure. Can you talk to us a little bit about the event that you're at right now and what's going on?
So Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event is a big 5-star event. So there's only 5 or 6 of them in the world. So it's the highest level that you can compete at in the sport of 3-day eventing. So they do a dressage test the first day, which will be on Thursday or Friday, because there's so many horses, they have to split it up between 2 days. Saturday, they'll do cross country, which is all outside over terrain. The course will be more than likely about 11 to 12 minutes long. And they'll cover a lot of ground. The speed's quite quick, and the obstacles are solid. So they're jumping in and out of water, over tables, banks, combinations. It's pretty cool. And then on Sunday, they have to come back and do a show jumping round. So that's in an arena with, the colored rails and stuff. And, the real question there is, how fit is your horse? How strong is your horse to come back and jump a clean round on the last day? So we're in Kentucky right now obviously at the horse park, and it's one of the coolest venues. It's so beautiful, and this event has been going on for a really long time. So it's real special to be here. And especially since this has been the only 5-star in the United States for a very long time, it's a cool thing to have here.
Okay. Ashley had a question come in. Is Equimax safe for an EPM positive horse?
It is. It is. Yeah, it won't have any effect on the organism that causes EPM, and so therefore we're not going to have any, inflammation or swelling at the site where that infection might be. Short answer is yes, it's safe.
Joan said that she missed the beginning and asked if you could recap the general worming protocol.
Well, like as we said, you want to use what we call a top shelf dewormer, which is going to contain, in our case, with Equimax, ivermectin and praziquantel. And with the praziquantel, of course, that adds the tapeworm aspect to the deworming spectrum. In addition to that, it's going to get roundworms, it's going to get strong giles, it's going to get pinworms, it's going to get your stomach worms, all the bots, it's going to get all the important,
all the good stuff,
parasites that we're concerned about. And we really recommend at a minimum twice a year. And the reason for that is so that we can control tapeworms. So we're going to give it in the fall, about 4 to 6 weeks after frost. And that way we know the bot flies aren't going to be active anymore. And then again in the spring when we go to grass. And then beyond that, it's really, you need to consult with your veterinarian as to how often your particular horse should be dewormed.
Trudy asked if Equimax will come out in pellet form anytime.
We're not planning to. There was a form of that in Europe a while ago, but we're not planning to come out with a pellet at this time.
Tammy asked if it has been tested for all gestations of pregnancy.
Yes, it has. Right, it's absolutely safe for a gestating mare.
And a lactating mare too.
Right.
Do you recommend rotation of wormers?
Talk to your vet.
Yeah, really. That's a question for your veterinarian, but I can tell you that the American Association of Equine Practitioners does not recommend that. And let me explain. We have a limited number of dewormer active ingredients available to us today as veterinarians. There are no new active ingredient dewormers on the horizon with any company, with any major company. So that means we need to conserve the tools that we have. One of the things that was discovered was that every time we deworm a horse, we actually select for the resistant forms of the worm against that particular active ingredient. If we rotate, we speed up the rate at which we get resistance to multiple active ingredients. And that's why we recommend staying with a particular active ingredient, for instance, ivermectin, and then use the tools that your veterinarian has available to tell you at which time you might want to think about switching to a different class of active ingredients. So hopefully that wasn't too complicated, but rotation is really something that we're trying to avoid these days so that we have something still in our toolbox to use should we have resistance show up on our particular farm.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Off the screen.
So Tammy asked, is deworming a senior with a 0 FEC twice a year safe?
It would be, yes. Yeah. FEC, of course, being fecal egg count. So that'd be an older horse that's not shedding any eggs. But remember, we still have that opportunity for tapeworms because tapeworm eggs are not going to show up on a fecal test. We're only going to pick those up about, at the maximum 5% of the time on a fecal test. So you really don't know. And we know there's certain regions of the country that have a higher concentration of tapeworms than other parts. For instance, the highest would be around the Great Lakes, and the lowest would be in the Southwest in Arizona and New Mexico, because the mites don't like that dry, hot environment.
Okay. In addition,
but they are present everywhere. We need to remember that.
In addition to deworming, what are some other ways to control parasites through proper barn management and things like that? Other ways to prevent them?
Maybe you can talk about some of the things you guys do.
For the most part, it's just keeping your barn clean. You know, we clean our stalls 3 times a day. So most of our horses go out at night throughout the year. So the stalls normally are clean on when they come in the morning. But even if we have a horse staying overnight, they get cleaned first thing in the morning, again at lunch, and again in the afternoon. So, you know, the minimal amount that you can have, you know, just a dirty manure on your ground is great. Dragging your paddocks, cleaning your paddocks is a really super important thing. Not to let it just sit and fester. You know, like some people will leave them, you know, and it happens a lot when people transition from north to south. You know, they kind of just leave their fields before they go south and don't drag them before they go, and that's not the best idea because then they come back and your grass is grown in, and then there's a lot of you know, a lot of issue there when you kick your horses back out and use those fields again. You know, the other thing I would say too is just to really keep a close eye on your horses. You know, watch them. Are they scratching their tails a bunch? Are they, you know, is their coat starting to not look good? There's a lot of kind of telltale signs that you can see pretty early on as to whether they're not feeling well or they've got worms or something like that. So just keeping a really close eye on your horses every day is super important.
Yeah, all those things are important. The dragging the pastures, let me just add to that, you know, and what Jimmy said was absolutely right on. I think a lot of times we forget the fact that fecal ball from that horse actually acts as a little protective shield against drying out or the effects of heat and sunlight on that parasite, which they don't like. But by dragging the pasture, we break those up, and so they get desiccated out on the pastures and never get a chance to develop into an infective form. So that's a really great tool that you can do if you want to be proactive in your deworming.
Great. That kind of answered the last few questions that we had come in about signs that your horse might have an infection. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
yeah. In young horses, I would just add pot belly foals is something you want to watch for. A nursing foal that's, you know, let's say 2, 3, 4 months old and it's starting to get a little rough coat and pot bellied. That's a classic sign of roundworms. And again, remember that's an age dependent worm, which likes horses under about 16 months of age.
All right. Do you have any advice for aspiring riders?
Just in general? Sure. So, you know, this is going to be kind of a twofold question. So if you're an aspiring rider that wants to become a professional, I suggest making sure that you are completely immersed in the sport, whatever sport you're doing, as much as possible. Find someone that you would like to emulate or has a really good program and go and work for them and be there and learn not just how to ride, but how to run an operation, vet care, horse management, how those people run their operations and deal with customers, clients, owners, all that stuff. Is, you know, there's a lot more to being a professional rider than just being a good rider. That's probably 20% of it. You know, the rest of it is just being really good at managing your horses and having sound horses at the end of the day, and that's really important. So if the most that you can go and work for someone and learn and work your tail off, that's really good. And then just aspiring as far as just being a better rider and wanting to do well is to sit on as many horses as possible, because every horse is so different and you have to have countless tools in your toolbox to be a better rider and to be good. And you only learn that by getting on a bunch of different horses and learning how to fix different problems from a different horse. And that means different breeds, you know, thoroughbreds, warm bloods, cobs, quarter horses. It doesn't really matter, you know. It just matters that you're learning how to use those tools and create new skills. And one thing I'll always say too is the only type of feeling you should have on the back of a horse is a sense of humor. You know, you've got to be really patient and understanding to the fact that they have no idea what you're asking, really realistically, and you're trying to train them. And, they might get the answer wrong a lot of times, and you can't get frustrated with that. You just have to be super patient. So I think that's a good thing to remember as well.
Well, you guys have a beautiful view there today. We can see some riders in the background. Very cool.
We're suffering in Kentucky.
All right, we did have one more question come in. Melissa says she has a horse on stall rest after surgery. Would you recommend worming more often?
That would be something she'd want to discuss with her veterinarian, especially the surgeon, right?
Okay, all righty. We don't have any more questions, so we want to thank you two very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
You're so welcome.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and draw our winners. So we have 2 winners, and they're going to get some Equimax along with a gift card. So our first winner is Leanne Roundtree. And
incredible.
Second winner is Lisa Free.
Yay!
Congratulations to you both. If you're still on here, go ahead and send us a PM and claim your prize.
All right, and then join Melanie and I Thursday. We will be live again. And one more thing before we leave.
Before we go, I wanted to remind everybody of our Swinging for the Fences sweepstakes that ends on the 23rd. So that is this week. So get your names in for that prize.
Once again, thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Dr. Dave, so much. We really appreciate you joining us.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.